Lowell Association for the Blind has been around since 1923 in Lowell. And we were initially started by the Middlesex Women's Club, which does not exist any longer, but felt that there was a need to support the blind in Lowell. And that what they did was provided transportation to doctor's appointments and helped people out with food and how to access supports through the state. We've expanded since those days. We don't provide the transportation any longer, although we do have a van for our own programming. And we do all ages 5 up until last year. We had a lady that was 102, I think, that came in for a program. So we've evolved. We do youth, senior youth, a teen employment program, a visually impaired partners program, which is a mentoring program, and adult programs. We do a radio reading service. We have Braille and technology training as well. What I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about today is how we are providing services during this difficult time. If you think back to March 16th, I remember coming into the office thinking that we would just keep the staff in the office and see what kind of programming we could do. Well, that morning, one of our volunteers, a college student, popped in, and I immediately said, "Go wash your hands," and he laughed. And I thought, oh no, we are in big trouble, because he takes public transportation and we weren't going to be able to control who popped in and how fastidious they might be with being, with hygiene and that kind of stuff. So that weekend had been a weekend where they decided that offices should close. So that morning I decided our offices would close and that we would close as soon as possible that day. And so in order to close, we needed to notify all of our volunteers, all of our clients, which needed to be done in large print and Braille. Our youth coordinator decided to send out some activity packets. So schools that were shutting down our students would have activity packets of things to do. And so she started putting those together. So we ended up closing. And then within a day, I met with my staff and we rethought that. So what we decided we needed to do was continue the radio reading service so that people could get the local news, because the newspaper was still being printed. So what we put in place was staff with keys would go in and we would rotate through a schedule. There's 3 of us, and we would each take a day and go in and read on the radio. That allowed us the opportunity to continue working on other projects that might need to be done in the office. We could respond to calls while we were in the office and do those kinds of things. And that we would continue to discuss how we could continue operating some kind of programming as the situation changed. Well, we decided initially that we would, we had to send out letters to everybody letting them know that we were closing. But the activity packets went out for the kids in large print and Braille, whatever they needed. And the youth coordinator decided that she would send those out on a fairly regular basis. Our teen employment program seized the opportunity to use the situation to get those program participants on Zoom and start doing how to do an interview on Zoom, how to send your resume, working completely over the internet, interviewing skills, looking for jobs, all those kind of things that can be done strictly on the internet. So they have not missed a beat, our senior teen employment program. For the other youth, we tried to have a program, and not surprisingly, no one showed up. So after we stepped back and decided to go back to how we normally communicate with all our kids, sending them out an activity, what we would be doing, inviting them to come on Zoom, asking them to reply whether they were going to participate in the program, and then sending out materials that included the program. So in order to get the materials, they had to RSVP. So our youth program and other programs have been operating like that during May, and have activities planned for May and June. Our adult program was a little more difficult to think about because most of our adults don't use the internet, and they don't use, they have never used Zoom. So what we decided to do with them was to start doing conference calls with them every couple of weeks, so that it would be easier, that they would just have to use their phone and dial a specific number and an access code. And the joy that the sound of that call, the first time that they all were able to communicate with each other, was amazing. They were so thrilled to be able to at least check in with everybody else on their call. So we've been doing the conference calls every couple of weeks, and we're thinking about trying to do a Zoom call with those that do have internet access, at least so they can give it a try. You can see the issues that people had getting on Zoom. So imagine being blind, trying to get on Zoom if you've never done it before. It is fairly simple, but there can be some challenges. So we're thinking about how to do that with them, for those that are interested in Zoom. So we've been running every 3 days. I go into the office and I do the reading, and are able to do some other work while I'm in there. So my adult program coordinator and my youth program coordinator have been coordinating their programs from home. So as we think about what we're going to do for reopening, we were waiting for the governor's outline on Monday. We're thinking that we will continue this during what he demonstrated the first phase would be, we're going to continue like this until the next round, where we'll bring the staff back to the office. And we have a large office, but I'm not sure how many people we could fit if we need to do it 6 feet apart. Some of the other issues that we're going to have is we're on the 2nd floor, and that involves an elevator. And so there's going to be a lot of disinfecting of the elevator every time somebody needs to get up and down on the elevator. So what we're going to do is use the first 3 weeks, those 3 weeks, as a way to map out a plan, what we can do. We may do some outside programming initially, and do a program in my backyard or in a park somewhere, so that we can ask people. We also need to check in with them to see what are they interested in coming to the office. Are they still worried about using public transportation or the Roadrunner services? How they're feeling about that. So we're going to have to do some legwork on all those kinds of things. The other issue that has been debated or talked about nationally that you don't think of is, for blind people, they often rely on sighted guides, where they grab the elbow of the person that is guiding them to be able to get to where they're going or to navigate safely. Well, a sighted guide is not a 6 foot apart experience. So there's issues around that. One of the suggestions was maybe they could use their canes and one person be on one end of the cane and the blind person on the other end of the cane. But that would also involve disinfecting the canes before and after for both parties to be safe. So there's a national or at least a statewide conversation with folks that are orientation and mobility specialists that teach the blind how to navigate about how this is gonna, how they're gonna make some best case scenarios on how to go about doing these kinds of things. So we need to figure that all out before we start thinking about bringing them back into the office. So we'll do this for 3 weeks, I guess, and then when the phase 2 of the governor's plan goes in, we'll be back into having the staff. Then we're going to plan the next phase as bringing our radio reading volunteers back, because our radio service, there are 2 separate units, 2 separate rooms for people to read in. They read as a team, but they are located in separate rooms. And we'll just have to think about making sure everything's disinfected before and after for volunteer safety, because it is a different person that reads every day or in each room. So the other thing, we're thinking about a number of ways to do the adult program, whether we limit the number of participants in a program, whether we have the programs outside and think about that for at least the summer months. The other issue is we do provide transportation for our youth programs, and we're concerned about that because it's a 15-passenger van and there's with kids, and our kids are obviously blind, and the first thing they do is start touching everything and each other. They want to know who's in the van. So we need to figure out if it will be safe and when it will be safe to be able to put children in the van and be able to take them out to do an activity or outside, and whether or not we'll have to limit those types of programs or if there's a safe way to operate them. And then finally, we'll hopefully, once this subsides, we'll get back to having some programs that we can on a regular basis. But right now we are operating through internet and Zoom and staying in touch with state and national leaders on how to best safely provide these types of programs when we get back.